Hello, we are back to dragons on the channel. It's been a little while unless you include the Seraphim, which I guess you could. They're kind of lizardy. Anyway, we are doing iridescent dragon wings in this one. This is a frequently asked kind of theme or question. How do I deal with large surfaces because they're intimidating? You know, large, heavily textured ones. How do we approach them with dry brushing and with stippling? We've got that nailed in this one. Absolutely, we have. Secondly, how do you do kind of cool effects like iridescence or pearlescence? We're not using pearlescent paints or iridescent paints in this one, but we're trying to achieve that kind of cool, fairly aggressive color transition effect, and we're letting the model do a lot of the work for us with its volumes and stuff like that. So hopefully this answers a load of questions that you guys may have. I'm pretty pleased with this end result. This is the result of an absolute failure of a test, which I then adapted, and I think it worked much better this time round. Stick around until the outro. I'm going to speak a little bit more at length about how I came up with this, the process that I went through and the testing that I went through. I think it'd be really useful information, but obviously if you just want to come here for the recipe and the method for achieving exactly this version of it, that's coming straight up. Before we jump in, a few people have been asking us about Halloween designs. We are doing a Halloween design. We got this super cool baby kind of widescreen texture palette, which is really cute. And that design, along with the spooky Artis Opus, is kind of echoed internally. We got some stickers that'll come with it. Pumpkins, any excuse for pumpkins is good. We've had pumpkins on our Halloween sets before, unsurprisingly, but I think the real winner is this kind of internal spooky sprue design. Anyway, there'll be a link below for that. Let's jump in. Rapid painting between different colors from base coat to end, pretty much with the same brush. This is an absolute classic Series D one. Let's go. All right, we've done some heavy experimentation and semi-successfully got concept to work here. I think we can do a better job much faster though, so let's put some stuff down. We're going to take a few simple-ish concepts. One is a shared final highlight color. You might have come across Mother Shades or Mother Highlights before. It's where exactly the same color is in all your shades or all your highlights, so all your darkest bits or all your lightest bits. This pastel yellow, you could use ice yellow from Vallejo as well, or anything else similar. That's going to be our final shared color. The rest is pretty much going to be GW. So we're going to have some, look at this caused problems before. We're going to have some pinky bits, some bluey bits, and we're going to have some purpley bits. Pretty easy. And hopefully we can stipple our way through them pretty fast. So I've got a pretty well used, actually you can tell because it's very rounded, one of my older ones. I've got a pretty well used large here. That's going to do most of the work for us. Okay, let's get everything on the palette and then we can get rocking and rolling. Want all of it prepared and in convenient places for me to mix fast. I'm also going to spot in a couple of scale 75 colors, which are going to be on the deeper ends of our pinks or our purples or our blues. In this case, it's the purples and blues. Yeah, it's going to explode at some point. It's literally going to explode. Miles better. And then we've got Eldenil Violet. Pretty much like Nagaroth Night. That color, I'd say, actually. Should be everything. Part of our final color for highlights, which we don't need yet. Let's rock on. So mixing our two purples for the starting steps. I'm basically going to just lather the entirety of the wing for this one. It's got Xeris purple in it, so we know just by definition it's going to cover really nicely. And basically that is perfect one coat coverage. You could airbrush this if you wanted, but genuinely I challenge anyone to airbrush a base coat that protects a little that consistently in that amount of time. It's going to take longer to dry than it did to apply. Right, so our first step after the very quick base coat is to take a little bit of the Screamer Pink and the Xeris Purple, and essentially what we can see from this angle, that's going to be what we hit. This is like airbrushing. You could airbrush this if you wanted as well, absolutely. We're just putting it down very roughly, and you can do it two ways. You can wipe it on, kind of smudge it in like I am, or you could go from one direction like this. I'm going to use a combination of both. I actually change it so the direction's a bit more generically from above. I think a bit of an easier concept to pull off. with the kind of blocks put down, just to fill in the gaps. You can do circles all over. This will start picking out stuff according to texture rather than volume. Help clean our brush a bit too. Or at it, take some water, help what's on there leave. It'll also help keep things nice and smooth. These spine bits, pinions, whatever they'd be, they're going to get picked out nicely with that as well. I'm just looking to build up these wings pretty organically, really. It's important that you don't have too much paint on your brush, and just be willing to repeat the same step. If you don't think what you're doing is having enough of an effect, give it a few more seconds before you go and load up more paint or take more moisture or anything like that. Okay, moving on, take a bit of our pink. It's a lot lighter, and as a result, it should affect the model way more easily. If in doubt, circles. I'm still aiming for particular areas, it's just I'm putting the circles in those areas and letting the model's texture do the work for me. This model's a joke. The texture is absolutely brilliant, and unlike the last ones, the pose is also brilliant. The last ones had brilliant texture, but the poses were a bit derpy and basic and anatomically weird, and they missed out the opportunities for some dynamic stuff. This is the best of both worlds. When GW get it right, they really do get it right, especially with things that copy nature, I think. Cool. Starting to look really nice and leathery. Now it's time for us to bring in. It's a lot more chalky than the colors that we've been using so far, because the colors that we've been using are GW, so we're going to be pretty careful with it. I'm not trying to grind this paint into my brush, I'm trying to work it off, mix it, keep it soft. And we're just shrinking the area so it's inside our previous pinky step. What this should do is it should really start picking out on edges. Right, cool. So we've got the beginnings down. No need to swap brushes or whatever. I'm just going to give it a bit of clean, slightly more thoroughly than before. Grab some of our starting blues. Let's see what we can do. We need to be a little bit careful. It's quite hard to make stuff like this work perfectly, especially in a rush, but we're going to give it our best shot. So we're doing the exact opposite, taking the model that we had, the angle that was our lightest, we're getting the angle that was the darkest, and we're going to kind of push these colors into the shadows. I could use a smaller brush if I was less lazy. So if I have like size issues, I am willing to drop down, but I'd rather not. I don't think it's quite what we need just yet. Again, if you got an airbrush, you could airbrush this stage if you wanted. Now, obviously, that's a very different color from the ones that we've been using. What we're going to do, though, is working towards Baccarat blue, which is basically a little bit Caribbean-y. It's got some yellow in it. As we work to a final color that's more similar to our yellow that we used to highlight the pink, things should look a little bit less aggressive. Should probably off the underside of this wing. Keeping on top of that moisture. Now what we can start doing is to our already pre-turquoisey blue, we can add a creamy yellow, which is obviously going to push it right in that direction even further. Damn, I missed an entire section. Look at that. Oh dear. There we go, fixed it with a mlap. Don't suggest eating your paints, but sometimes it happens, doesn't it? Still trying to keep on top of that moisture. We're working fast. When you work fast and you clean a lot like I do, because I got good habits, you're really going to use a lot more moisture, especially if you're somewhere hot or dry or air conditioned. Okay, so we're not taking any of our other blues now, we're just adding the pastel yellow, but it's still mixing with our blues that are in the brush, so we got away with that. Finger painting for the win. I'm not trying to push it into the gaps, I'm getting it into the area that I want, and then I'm stroking it away from me. It's all directional. Cool. Right, what I'm going to do at this stage is give it a pretty decent clean and then repeat the pure yellow without it being contaminated on the pinky areas. I might go for a pink dry brush first or a mix of the pink and the yellow, but we'll see. Brush is still a little bit blue. Okay, that'll do. Might step down in brush size soon. Might. Pink, yellow. And brush is still a little bit too wet from the cleaning, so just going to continue putting on this paper. We are looking to dry it out here, but only because I made it too wet, not because drying it out is good in general. No paper towels, guys. Okay, pink again, yellow. I think we're good. And then from above, it's pretty much pure yellow. One of the wings, this one here, the blue went too far around, so take a little bit more of the pink, try and re-establish that, and then I think that'll probably be enough. I'm gonna work quite quick here. Don't mind spending a little bit more time on the kind of main event outward facing parts of the wings or the sides of the wings at all. They're kind of where the piece showboats itself. Can always wash some purple back in if we need to later. All right, so I know that if we show a picture of this guy completed, you're going to ask how we did the different aspects of it. Luckily, there is not many different aspects to this piece at all. So essentially, I'm going to cover the metal and that'll almost be it. But the metal's really important. GW did an incredible job on the metal of this mini. So let's quickly rifle through how it approached doing the metallics on this mini. pretty easy, this. Just repeat until you're happy with how old it looks. You're adding time to your model, so when it looks like you've added enough time, enough age, enough battle scars, you're good. You can always finish it off with the final highlight, which probably I'll do once this step's fully dry. Looks ancient, really does. Pleased with that. Never be afraid to put paint in with your washes. Extremely soft, careful final dry brush. We're looking to just about pick up on and enhance things. Tail of the gold, mostly silver. Really soft. Barely picking out my finger. Soft touch. Hey, there we go, that's the ticket. Nice. Quick verdigris. Watered down Sotek, then watered down Baharov. Just applied around the rivets. And in any sections we think it would have pulled in. You can do this twice if you want. You're better off using it like a wash. So a couple of applications and just build up opacity. With it going in the areas that generally will be darker, it should stand out easily. That's kind of helpful. Nice. Bit of Baharov, diluted again. Be more sparing with this. Okay, so our metallics are sorted. That's a really important part. Basically, quite a lot of the model that remains is just generic accessories. So is armor silver, done very much like we've done a lot on the channel. Dark silver with the same two colors mixed in. Washed it in oil, repeated the silver, back and forth, back and forth. We'll do the gold pretty similarly, actually. I'll have his gold more yellow and fancy than this. So rather than null oil, I'll just use sepia. Really easy there. We'll probably still verdigris it. The major other thing that's going on aside from his face is the details and the purity seals, especially with these being so front facing. And they're also kind of attention grabby. So I'm gonna spend a little bit of time on those. Between skulls, metallics, and purity seals / cloth, whatever these are, I think that's the main important bits handled. Dragon's head, the moment we've done some dotting on that armor with the verdigris, should look great. Once it's got an eye and a tongue, we'll be laughing. Okay, so nothing's going to change. I spoke about using these two colors here. You can see them from previous. We're going to continue doing that. Now what I'm going to do here is basically kind of an equivalent of the metallic that we just did. It's exactly the same type of method really, but we're not going to be using washes, I don't think. We might need to kind of tie stuff together. Anyway, I'm going to mix up these three colors until I'm happy, and then we're going to bring in the big guns. So I've got a Procool paint here. These are all strong. They're all potent. They're all really nice to use and kind of creamy as well. Quite matte, but that's absolutely fine for the surface that we've got. And then I'll probably use one of their blacks as well, because again, I'm after strength. So for the purity seal, I'm going to make a mix, and then I'll just add ivory to it as we go, and that should kind of handle things nicely. We'll see if my idea works out. I imagine this will look pretty strong on the palette. Yep, and it will be. So let's get that mix on the go. I'm going to make up a fair bit because I'm going to be using it for a while. Only a dot of the purple here. We don't want it to look too weird. Much too much. Carrick's not very strong. I want it to look a little bit, you know, kind of fleshy. There we go. That'll do. It's actually not a bad skin colour, that, to be fair. Oh. I didn't base coat it. Okay, so having not missed fundamental steps, let's jump back in. I'm imagining this is going to have pretty bad coverage because nothing that's in there is strong really apart from the purple. Yep, that's okay though. So basically, holding in mind the orientation of this, which shoulders this on. Okay, so the rivet is up as far as this is concerned. So I'm going to help myself out. I don't have to imagine it. I'm going to put it at the angle it is on the model. There we go. And the folds that face upwards, I'll hit first and I'll hit more. Not forgetting the sides. So they can end up with a flat coat, that's fine if so. So all those have been hit twice. So we'll be stronger. And now we fill in the gaps. Extremely simple. We're going to add our ivory to the mix, which will be super strong. I'm basically going to do the same thing again. Do you want it to end up really bright? At least in the upwards facing parts. Also find they're looking a little bit scrappy. It's not going to look neat. It is hanging off a dragon. Maybe has had a slightly rough life. Should probably change to a not old brush, but kind of used to how this one's behaving now. Okay, well, I imagine it'll be the final one. Cool, got a good mix of kind of scrappy but bright. Now the scary bit. Wash the soap off this. I left it soaking after I last used it, if you're wondering what that is. So what I'm going to do is try and do a couple of quick. I just aim for acceptable with free hands, so as long as I haven't screwed it up and I think it looks all right, repetition will carry us through. Got my fiston on here, just aiming for good flow. So I'm going to try and get a couple of like illuminated first capital letters in there. And put them on easy, clear areas. Then we'll see how this behaves. I assume this is exactly the right tool for the job because their paints are nuts, mega strong. But I recommend them as a brand. You don't see them on the channel much because they're matte. I don't generally paint with matte paints, like especially very matte paints, which they are. But when you need them, they are perfect. Quite a lot of other people really like them for all of their painting styles as well. Pete used them for a bit on his channel, Pete the Wargamer. Right, do a little practice on my nail. Might be a bit too dilute. I don't want it grey. I want to do one black line that flows off easily, but doesn't kind of drown things. Now, I screwed up on my last ones. I started at the top. I'm going to start somewhere somewhat hidden while I try and remember how to paint. Okay, I do want it more black. I always think of this stuff like that scene in Sweeney Todd where he's preparing his razor. Don't rush it. Like, when your brush is behaving well, you will know. Hold breath. So not painting actual things, specific lines or whatever. I'm just going for some broken things. Generally, it's a line that goes across, but every now and again I'll go up to suggest a taller letter or lower to suggest a lower one. If your brush stops behaving like you want it to, go and prepare it again. Don't continue and just try and push through with a dry tip or something like that. Notice I'm jumping around to the most important bits. Like when I'm feeling like the brush is behaving well, I'll do the bits that matter the most, and then I'll fill in the gaps at the end. And if I screw up there, it matters way less. I might do another red section or two. Cool. That's probably actually the best one I've ever done, I think. Brilliant. And breathe. Compare it to the last. Yeah, it's better. Never mind. They don't match, but I'm happy with it. If people are wondering, by the way, that was a 00, or triple. I don't use the smaller brushes often, and I don't use the matte paints often, but it's all about using the right tools for the job. That would have been a lot harder if I wasn't using a paint that outstanding and that strong. So thoroughly recommend thinking about what paints you're using for what tasks, always. Cool. Right, so I'm going to stop there so I don't fuck it up. Sure, Ian's bleeped that, but yeah, stop. Don't fiddle. That's okay. I'm pleased with that, so I'm not going to fuck it up. While I'm here, I am going to quickly put a little bit of a wash around that pin. God, this is so much harder not on a holder. Use a good holder, guys, or use something that makes it easy. Blue tack it to a paint pot or something like that. Yeah, it's a prototype. It's cute, isn't it? Okay, so I wanted to very quickly cover post shading. If you're not happy with the tone of something and you want to add color, can't add lightness, that's impossible without white. Post shading is a really good way to achieve it, so we're going to run through that. I've got two colors here. I've got Croc-Score scales, which is an incredibly strong contrast. You could use achromatic blue. It's a little bit green, confusingly, so I'm going to dilute it using the achromatic, and then you can use whatever medium you like. You could use contrast medium here if you wish. That is a weak mix, but it's going to do enough. And then we've got Druchii Violet, which itself is a shade, so it won't need as much diluting. That's its strength there. Mine's a little old. Okay, and then we're going to have some medium at the ready. This is incredibly simple and really forgiving. It's going to do two things. It's going to bring color to our piece, and it's also going to pull in cracks if you happen to have cracks, which we do, and both of those are traits that we want. So I'll run over it. This is way simpler than people think. If you want somewhere to look more vibrantly blue, we blob it on. Wash our brush. At the top, use medium to fade it out. Grab the purple, we've washed our brush again. Blob it here, smudge it into the medium. That is it. So if you want to add color or you want to bring those cracks back, that's all you do. Anywhere where you want it to be light, use medium or use water. There's water, and just fuzz it out. And it's up to you. You can do a couple of stages. Make your mix too weak rather than too strong. And even if you do like a straight line, blue, purple, it's very, very simple to fix. Because it's wet on wet, you just go back and forward in the blend. That is it. I cannot emphasize how incredibly simple and useful this technique is. Really, really magic. And it's something that people think is more difficult than it is for sure. So if you make a mistake, I don't want that to be blue, because it stays wet for a while, you just pull it off with a wet brush, or dilute it with some pure medium that we've got down here prepared, or even rub it off with a finger. Super simple, absolutely cheaty. So that went pretty well. I'm really pleased with this and I enjoyed it. I often enjoy my painting, but I think the enjoying it is part of doing a test and absolutely like just smashing an idea against the wall and it really failing. There's going to be some pictures appearing now. Basically, I started with a kind of idea in mind. I didn't properly commit to the colored part of that though, and I just had it really dark until I got to my highlights, and they weren't very colorful. So that's why we started from a really colorful base with the violet and the Xeris purple, and we transitioned through to the, the bold colors that we've used. You can shrink the amount of the yellow white final highlight if you want this to remain more bold and punchy. And if you don't want to do the kind of, like luminescent kind of crazy color shifting, you can just go from the purple up to, up straight through the turquoises to the yellowy turquoise final highlight, and it'll look really good. I'll show a picture of one of the inside wings of the dragon here, where that turned out really nicely. Don't be afraid to experiment with this stuff. Like, give it a go. If it doesn't work, have a look at it and then see what you think might be the problem. For me, I was like, well, it's just a bit dark. I can't see what's going on. So I use more color. And that was just a matter of starting more bright or more saturated with the purple rather, and then keeping my colors as a higher proportion of the sections as we went through the steps rather than immediately shrinking to a kind of whitey highlight. It'll work with glazes really nicely, and that's a really good way to kind of put back that depth, but also if they run into the recesses, it's going to increase the kind of contrast between those dark wrinkles between the scales, whatever they are, wrinkles, scales, details. It's going to make them dark in the recesses, and then you can have a nice kind of idea of that texture, even from far away. Works out really, really nicely. So that was the kind of journey that I went on. Don't be afraid to experiment with this stuff. And actually, we covered over one of the wings multiple times because we've been quite careful, as we are always, with putting down too much texture or avoiding matte paints in the beginning and stuff like that. That one wing that I'm showing on screen now has been painted 3 times, and it doesn't really show up overly, especially on like a tabletop quality scent. So I was really, really pleased with that. Chat a little bit about the Halloween set. It's so cute. I really like this design. We're going to be doing quite a lot of stuff coming up. We've been pretty busy with shows, but we've got several new releases that are kind of immediately on the horizon. So keep your eyes peeled in the next couple of months. Even if you're not interested in the Halloween set, sign up to our social medias and our newsletters. We've got quite a lot of kind of, I guess I call them hobby accessories that we're planning at the moment. We've got some new machinery. We've got plenty of staff who are being trained up in the new machinery. So we should have some pretty nice stuff dropping fairly soon, along with some new brushes, new sizes, and new designs. They're all really exciting. They're in testing now. They've been in testing for quite a while, and they are brilliant. And some amazing stuff you've seen from some amazing painters, not me, better than me, has been appearing on the internet without you knowing necessarily that it was painted with them using their unique traits. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Please like, please comment, please subscribe. Keep your eyes peeled for the next one. And on that subject, if you're not subscribed to Zamikito's Miniatures, check him out, subscribe to him. Don't know why I've said that. Maybe more on that soon. Catch you in the next video.
It's just always rushing that does it, or not thinking, basically. I'd literally done this on a wing. I rewatched the first wing that I recorded, and then just didn't follow it. So right, the steps that we should do. So you can transition from the Xeris to our turquoise. Just gonna do a little bit of a mix, and this is fairly dilute. I just put some water in the pad, so it's quite wet. What we're gonna do is, if we can see it from this angle, it is getting smushed. A little bit more purple. We can always take you know, more subtle steps if we're feeling a bit worried about how stuff's going. I do want to retain the cracks, if at all possible. Kind of deleted them there. It's weird, this model. It's got some angles where the cracks are really good, and then some angles where, I don't know if it just feels like they weren't molded or sculpted as well from some directions. It's not the end of the world, but if you're wondering why your dry brushing doesn't behave consistently, very often it's not you, it's the surface you're on. Maybe that's not consistent. So we're just poking at an angle into where we need. And as ever, the further we go, the more confident we can be with the brush, because it's got less paint on it and the paint is leaving less easily. We've got to work harder to get it to leave. I want to make sure we don't miss anywhere, because that seems to be the root of a lot of the times I doubt myself or think things aren't going to work out. I'm masking, by the way, with my palm. Should probably be more clear about that. If I did this, my strokes go around the edge. I don't want them to, so I'm just poking into my palm, using it as a very, very tactile and flexible masking tape. There we go. So give ourselves a bit of a transition, and make sure that anywhere we want to be painting with our next step, we're painting heavily with this step. So we got it from here, got it from here. I think that's pretty much everything. Keep on top of the water. We don't want it saturated. Running out of skin. Right. Go for a pure version of the Sotek green. Obviously, we've got some of our previous color in the brush. We've mixed on the same area of the palette, blah, blah, blah. But it is a pretty strong mix, that color. See, I'm very purposely using it from a particular direction. And I'm using the angle of the model where at all possible to help me. If you're getting in areas like this, where it's quite hard for the paint to leave, you're either going to need to press hard, or you're going to need to make it easier for the paint to leave, which you can do with water or a tiny bit more paint. There's no kind of perfect rule for that. It's just you'll get a feeling for what works better under the circumstances. Okay. Beginning to get there now. So with all of the turquoise down, I'm just going to jump to another brush. And I'm going to quickly get down some of the purple and some of the pink. Poopy coverage, Emperor's Children, and equally poopy coverage, which is crazy considering how much white must be in this. Foreground pink. Kind of useful though in a way, because I'm pretty sure there are properties that stop them from caking as much as other colors would. So it's not not just negatives for sure. Okay, the opposite. So from above and from this side, whereas we were from below and from the other side. There's going to be some real access issues from this side. It's not the end of the world. I'm going to go straight up to what looks like a pure pink. We're just going to mix it in the same place on the palette that we were with our previous one. I'll just do a lot to soften it. I should hit the top of the wings as well, shouldn't I? Right, and then pure pink but mixed only where there's pink. Taking a little bit more care and delicacy with this. Still too heavy. Should have gone to the dampening pad, I think. And what we're going to do is go for the yellow. We've remembered that it is the strongest yellow in the world, of course. No, we didn't. Every time. Every time, Byron. So strong, almost we can grab a bit of purple to put it back. Okay. Right. With a little bit of that done. Back to this and to the Baharoth. right, and then we jump into the stuff that's going to start making a real difference. So give it a good clean, a little bit of the Baharoth, a bit of our turbo yellow, and then with care. Stroke direction, really important with this. And keep it consistent if we're going to sell the idea. Now we're in the final highlight colors. It doesn't matter if we sneak around the edge, because basically they should be kind of finishing in these colors anyway. Getting there. And then, given that we gave this one a little clean, what we can do is use this as a little bit of a smaller circumference brush for doing the same type of work. Cool.